Hello, everyone.
All that.
Did I accidentally walk into a
Hello.
cyber meeting or what's happening here? Oh, there's
No.
at least thankfully somebody else.
Yeah, Justin.
Hello.
Hello, Foley. Welcome back. Nice to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you guys. Here I heard I missed some nice demos last week.
Yeah, we're making progress. I think we're at the point now where we can put some code together. Hopefully there's been some activity in the background. I have not had my eye on this task this week, unfortunately. But we'll find out what the status is today. Hi, Dom.
Hello, hello, hello. Good evening or good afternoon.
Okay, let's give it a minute or so and then see if anybody else joins us.
Can you hear
I'll
me
be
now?
right back.
Yeah. Can you
Yes.
hear you,
Hello,
Tom?
Kyle. I can hear
Hello,
you.
Kyle.
Awesome stuff. Hey, Bailey, sure, long time no chat, huh?
It's been a while.
How's the weather that side? Getting cold now? Still,
Luckily, not yet. Mornings and afternoons, maybe a bit, but still nice in the day at least.
it's been scorching, yeah. Like summer came early.
Yeah, I hear you guys are having a nice time.
Can't wait for summer. I don't like the winter.
Alrighty. I'm kind of hoping that we're going to get Brian because he was leading the charge on PRs and things.
I would hope. I did have a look through some of his PRs though.
We did say that we were going to put the first PR onto the TMS service, right?
Mm-hmm. There's one there.
And then use that one as a template before we rolled it out to everything else.
Okay. My biggest thing was, um, are we gonna merge these PRs in even if there's fixes to be done? And I picked up a few things that we can change in it. Do we fix them beforehand or only after? Obviously, before the
Mm,
whole
that's
rollout.
a that is a good question. Well, let's do this. Let me share here quickly.
I think before we get to merging, I think we've got a decision that we need to make on the table. There's two separate means of doing the Helm charts, and we saw demos of them in the previous session. So the one is the centralized Helm repo where all the Helm charts are, or the alternative is what Brian was demoing to us last time, was that you can have a Helm repo in every repo. Oh, sorry, a Helm chart in every repo for that component itself.
Can I suggest that you give us your opinion if the decision was a distributed setup where the Helm charts live in the repos, and then there's an umbrella chart in the Helm repo?
Well, I think we can just take a look at what that would mean. So there's some immediate questions that just comes up, and that is if it's a distributed Helm, let's say in every repo there's a Helm chart, how would you parameterize it? So because what I'm envisioning is that every Helm chart in every repo needs to have its own values.yaml file in order to
Yes.
parameterize it. And then if you want to deploy the central, if you want to deploy the full stack, then you'd have to go into every values.yaml file individually for every component to populate your variables.
You don't
Which,
have to.
yeah.
I think that was also what we saw last week, and the intention there was to say that you can parameterize out of the central repo into the satellite repos. The same way that you would override this for a Docker Compose, the way that we do it in the full stack, Helm has the facility to actually parameterize these values.yaml files from the central repo. Somebody please remind me or help me if I'm misremembering, but Brian did seem to think that that was possible.
Yeah, you can. So when you Helm install the things, you can parameterize and just add the values in when you're installing those Helms individually.
So
like
what would
say,
yeah.
So let's say if for TMS, if everything's going to be running on the same producer streams or whatever like that, you can just copy those commands for each Helm install and you can just populate those values in there and then it will deploy it with those values.
Yeah, so then you'll have to have you'll have to have a command per repo, per Helm chart that you want to install, right?
Yeah.
So, and then for each of those commands, you will have to manually populate the command line variable, the command line instruction to say use these variables instead of the values.yaml or
correct.
It's an override, basically.
It sounds a bit tedious, yes. And also having to have multiple Helm commands. So for every repo, if you have your 30 rules plus the 10 Tazama processes, then you have to run 40 commands and manually populate the command lines for each of them with your, let's call it values, your parameters. And then what would it look like for the central repo? You would have the values.yaml where you can specify all the variables. And you will only specify something like your Redis connection string once, because all or well key connection strings, but I think the parameter is still called Redis. So you would only specify it one time, and the same for your NATs and your everything, all the shared services. You only specify the value once, and then your centralized Helm chart will use your values.yaml. So then your parameter will only be Helm Compose up, and you won't have to specify. You'll only end up with one command.
Making that agreed. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so I think that's more the impact. We can evaluate the impact of what would it mean to have the Helm repos or the Helm charts in separate repos instead of in a central repo, and then we can make a informed decision instead of asking me my opinion. But I think less commands and using the values.yaml is what I would hope for.
Agreed, because I was also thinking about it last night. Because we've already got those deployment YAMLs and the service YAMLs in each of the repos, if we could try to figure out a way to get the Helm chart in the central repository to pull through those values and then populate it from one command in the central. So I'm still thinking about that.
Yeah, so I think what we have to then evaluate is what functionality are we losing out on, or what would be the advantage of having the split Helm charts or distributed Helm charts?
Well, the same that we have with the Dockerfile at the moment, where the actual ability to set up a repo is co-located with the code in that repo, right? So a component has because we're a poly repo system, the component has set up instructions that lives with the code, with the component. And it also
which does make
makes
sense if you want to deploy the component on its own, right? And that's why the Docker files and deployment files are in that repo, because there's a reason I might want to do that. And the full stack uses that, and we use that to build the images, right? But then if you talk about Helm, the specific ask is to set up the full system.
Not always. Many of the components are optional. It's not a foregone conclusion, and you may want to set up some components off the system and other components you are compiling because you've made a sort of a change or a customization to it. The modular nature of the system is intended for you to mix and match.
Yeah, and I think that's why the one of the discussion points earlier was how would we set it up to be able to deploy certain things, and then I think the answer was that you can decide what you want to deploy based on the values.yaml, or to have I can't remember the full discussion, but we've had this discussion. If you have a central repo, how would I only be able to deploy some things? And then we had an answer for that. But so
Well, there are
yeah, so
apparently
that's
three
the two
different
options.
patterns. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there are three patterns for that, right? There's a namespace override, where the umbrella's values.yaml overrides any satellite's defaults by nesting under the dependency's name, right? So basically, it has the same namespace and it'll just replace whatever is in the satellite repo. And that happens at render time. So you'll run the YAML and then there will be an override and the umbrella repo wins, basically, by default. So every repo has a values.yaml of its own, like the one you can see on the screen here. And then you will have a YAML chart for anything that you want to override that is not the default. You will have this nested inside the Tazama Helm repo, values.yaml. That seems fairly straightforward.
Okay,
Then you
so
also
you're
have a global
specifically talking
method.
about the parameterize. So this would overcome the
Yeah,
need to modify a bunch of separate values.yaml
exactly.
files. So
Yeah.
when you do a PR for, let's say, the TMS service, you will need to add the values.yaml to the TMS services value.yaml, and you should make sure that it also exists in the central Helm repo to have those same properties.
If there is an override. If there's no override required, you can just leave it in the TMS repo. You will only override the ones you want to override.
Okay, so when I want to deploy the full Tazama stack, I will still need to then go to every
No,
values.yaml for
no,
every repo.
no, you don't have to. So let's assume that this is the template that we've got here, right? So you have
Mm-hmm.
the values.yaml over here is if you want to set up the TMS service for whatever reason by itself on its own, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Helm. What will happen is if I want the TMS service then to be deployed as part of all of the other ecosystem files, I
Mm-hmm.
will choose which of the values in this YAML file gets overridden in the values.yaml file of the Tazama-Helm repo,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and I would only put the ones that I want to override in that repo. So when I'm doing a modification and I want to change the way that I'm deploying something, I only have to change the core YAML, not every YAML. Because all of these things are sort of pass-through exposed then. The security context. I can then create a TMS service section or an alias with a security context nested underneath it, and that will override everything in this structure. Or if I don't put it in there, this will prevail. It will leave this, it'll use this. Does that make sense? Did I explain that right?
Makes
Yeah, no,
sense.
it does make sense. So if you use the central Helm, it will override whatever is, if there is a duplicate key, it will
Yes.
use the one from the central one. Um, but where get a bit confused is if I use the central one, I don't see how I will have the distributed one, because I'll check out the central Helm repo, right? And then I'll only have the central Helm chart.
Oh, it depends on where it's hosted. So if it's in the Helm registry, I guess. I don't know how it's compiled. Does anybody else know? Because before I embarrass myself by guessing.
Well,
Because
it
like
doesn't
the
get compiled. You just you have the Helm chart. So
yes,
if you check out the Helm chart, you can have the physical code on your machine and you can run a command line terminal to run it, or you can incorporate that Helm chart into your repository. So Kubernetes, whatever, you can have it in that repository, and then but it's the same thing.
let me show
So
you how I'm cheating. Right.
mhm,
You could
Don't
have
look
it
at the
as a
title.
dependency.
So basically you have the namespace override, which is the typical main mechanism according to Claude, right? So in your umbrella chart.yaml, you will have dependencies for the TMS service and you will tell it where it is, right?
mhm,
The repository where it's being hosted. And then you will have a values.yaml that will just say for the TMS service, it's overridden. So you're already telling the central one where that YAML chart is. And the name of it is the TMS service YAML chart. And this is where you're going to find it. And these are the overrides.
mhm. Yes, yes, that's how it would work if you want to use the Helm chart as it is in the Tazama GitHub. But
Yes.
if it's in the Tazama GitHub, I can't modify it, right? So in order for me to make a values.yaml change, I will need to have that
Which one? The values.yaml in the umbrella or the values.yaml in the TMS service?
in the values.yaml of the TMA service. So I want to specify a parameter for my TMA service. In order to
Well, why would you
specify that
want to?
parameter, because I need to tell it where my NATS is, for example.
Yeah, but then you specify it in the umbrella values.yaml. I'm like that's why I'm struggling to understand. Why would you want to update the values file in the TMS service repo directly if you can override it from the central repo instead?
You can do that, yes, and that's that's why I'm saying we have to maintain. If I want to add a property in the TMA service values.yaml,
Sure. Okay,
then
so
I need to add it
maintenance, right?
centrally and in the umbrella so that I know
If
I
you
can
want it
modify it, right?
overridden. Yes, if you want it overridden.
Yeah.
Because if it the default will live here, yeah, or in the TMS service. The default
Hmm.
lives in the TMS service, right?
Hmm.
The override comes from the umbrella. If the default only is always good enough, then sure, you probably won't need to add it. But you are correct. You can add things to the TMS service and not add them to umbrella, or you can add them to the TMS service and add them to the umbrella. And it'll depend on whether you want the override or not. That's how I'm understanding this now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
So
makes sense.
that does make sense, yes. But there's a reason why you have the values.yaml, and that's for parameterization. So who decides if I want it modified or not? That's the whole purpose of the values.yaml. So for me, the approach should be all values.yaml should always be central as well,
Sure,
because that's why that
that can,
exists, right?
yeah,
Otherwise, I just hard
that
code
that
it in
can
the
be a
code.
policy. Yes, that can be a policy, right? Because I'm
Mm-hmm.
like thinking like, for example, you can configure basically just about anything, right? So
Mm-hmm.
let's have a look here quickly, right? So I could say that is a Tazama recommended default. Don't mess with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't expose this or put a YAML override for this because I want people to leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a configuration option for the TMS service. So I think like in principle, I agree with you. We might as well make sure they are persistently coordinated.
Yeah.
Whenever you are adding something here, you should be adding it to the Tazama Helm folder. I think as a principle, it makes sense. And if we what we're trying to agree on is the principle, then I say I second your proposal.
Which one?
The one that if we are making changes to the TMS service values.yaml file, that change should be reflected in the umbrella YAML file as well, so that it becomes an override option by default.
Okay, that makes sense. Yes, if we do decide to go with the distributed, then we have to maintain everything in two places.
Sure, but also we get to test it as we go. And for me, that is actually a big selling point of having it distributed, because you do have the capability of unit testing that we very much don't have right now. And this is also the immediate problem that we have, why the YAML charts over here are 2 months later than the actual release. We're going to have a lag every single time we do a release because the YAML has to wait for the release. Or it has to delay the release. And I would want to get to a unit testing perspective where some of these YAML charts don't need to be unit tested or updated because we never actually change the component that hosts them. I would ring fence it into that component. It just feels cleaner. It is also the current approach that the Linux CNCF projects all follow. So from a Linux perspective, they have adopted that as sort of a semi-standard. Rodney?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I am mostly wondering sort of like the scope of the distributed version. Say you deploy the TMS's Helm chart in isolation. What's the expectation there? Should it have a database on its own? Because I'm also thinking of the rules and how they read from, let's say, the transaction history that the TMS wrote and stuff, if it's not on the data cache, for example. So that's my question. I don't know if it's making sense, the scope of what it is that a TMS deployment in isolation should cover. That's not immediately clear to me.
So if and I'm not entirely sure how this works, right? I feel like I'm getting asked higher grade questions, and somebody else please help me here. But what my expectation is here, or how I think it might work in practice, is there might be a bug that gets fixed in the TMS service, and that is the only component that now needs to be upgraded.
But so the question is, what is the Helm chart installs everything that you need for something? That's the expectation when I run a Helm chart, is it should install everything I need for this one thing to work, right? So in TMS's case, it needs a NATS, it needs a Valkey, it needs a Redis,
Yes,
it needs
it has dependencies, right? Those dependencies are defined in the Helm chart itself.
Yes, so the
Sam, are you
expectation is
about
when
to
I
help
spin
me?
up.
Sorry, I'm not about to help.
Just you're about to make it worse.
For you, probably. Yeah. Can I go? Yeah.
You're sure. I mean,
Okay.
I want to come back to this conversation, but I don't have answers, right? So if you guys are asking me questions, then it would be helpful if you proposed a solution, because I don't have one.
Yeah. So for what it's worth, I didn't want to like prejudice or like give too much information before make the decision, but I see Mr. Foley struggling to make the point, but I'm on that camp as well, where I don't see practically a point to having the Helm chart in individual repos. Docker, it makes sense because they're containerized independent. I think even was it Kyle who brought up the point also about prerequisites or dependencies, and yeah, we don't need to usually Helm test or sorry unit test the Helm charts directly as such. And from like what I've seen, it's there's a lot of maintenance to be done. For example, upgrading images. If I think this Helm repo, like I think Tazama Helm might become the bundle that you use for making Tazama releases eventually, because this includes a snapshot of all the dependent repos and their versions that are tested and released. Sorry about that. So yeah, that's my, let me say, vote on this one. If both are equal, yeah, I would prefer that, because I think it makes maintenance easier, instead of, let's say, there was my question also in the chat from before. If there are too many repos, and let's say there is one maintenance item that you need to do across all of them. For example, now in Mojloop, let's say there are 40 to 50 repos included in the bundle. It's not practical for me to go make those in all those. I mean, we have to if we have to, but having them in one place makes it easier to refactor.
Taking that. So my thing, yeah, so I totally agree. So I think the consensus here is that what's the point of having Helms in each repo? I see that you asked your chatbot there.
Yes.
What the point would be. But my thing would be is that unless you want to test TMS in isolation by itself, there wouldn't be necessarily any point to have a home chart specifically for TMS.
Well, that's what the Docker stack is for, right? And I think that was Foley's point as well. We already have a mechanism for unit testing of a component. So, why do we need another one? To do exactly the same thing, and only in a way that makes the other one more difficult for the thing that it's supposed to do.
Yeah, literally.
So let me give you the honest read, right? And the load-bearing argument and the smoking gun. Have I left any AI cliches on the table? We're doing it this way because this is the way that Brian proposed it, right? And at the moment, Brian is the only guy who's actually doing the work on putting together a proposal and dropping some code in this thing. And the intention here was to say, okay, well, we'll drop the code and then we will collectively review the submission and then make a decision around it. And when we were here last week, we kind of agreed that we were going to go this way and we were going to put the distributed thing together with an umbrella repo. And at the time, last week, only 7 days ago, we all thought that it was a okay idea, right?
Yep.
And now here we are a week later, and we are saying, okay, well, the way that we thought we were going to do this, and Brian was doing all the work for it, we are changing our mind. And unfortunately, Brian is not here.
To defend himself.
So I'm a little bit so like I don't know how to go forward with this, right? Because here we have, just for the sake of argument, 14 files in the TMS repo that basically has now implemented the thing that we all agreed on last week. And I'm worried that if we agree now on a new thing, then next week we're going to get here again, and then we're going to be like, you know what? We reviewed this last week. We thought we had a pretty good idea on the table. And now a week later, we've had a time to think about it, and we'd like to change our mind. So,
my biggest thing was I read the code and
please
stuff,
help
and it
me.
didn't make sense to me.
Okay. So like please help me out a little bit here, because like I am not in a position of authority here. You guys can see that every time you ask me a difficult question, I have to ask Fable to please explain it to me and use small words. Right? I have a standing order with Fable to Eli 5 everything that it sends me. So
I
like
think
I don't have the technical authority here to be able to make a call. Like if I am asking this question to Claude, and this is probably procedurally the question that we should have asked when this was Brian's proposal. And Brian made this proposal almost a month ago already when he did his first submission, because he submitted those changes into the Tazama Helm already, and I reviewed that initial PR and I was terribly confused why it had a complete copy of the TMS service in it, right? Because I didn't understand. Only to realize later that what he actually wanted to do was to set up a distributed one. And I'm assuming he's doing that because it works that way in his environment as well. Did we lose Sam? Did Sam have to go?
yes, he sent the message. So,
okay.
Justice, I think the discussion when Sam initially or not Sam, sorry, when Brian initially mentioned he's thinking about that approach on the discussion on GitHub, it was raised that a future discussion will be required on the approach, central Helm repo or not, and then
Sure,
Brian
right.
said he'll create the PR so that we can take a look at it. But just something else you said is that Brian's the only one that's doing some work on it. The Helm charts that we've been looking at was the Helm charts that Dom did, which we also have an open PR for, and that's why we
Sure,
had two
right.
options on the table. We had the choice of we have two examples, and Brian now made the PRs. So I think what's valuable now is we can take a look at what it would actually look like. And now we can also ask the questions, what's the pros and cons with both? And then we can decide if we want to take the distributed Helm, which we've got an example for the TMS service, or do we want the full Helm charts that we've got an example for from Dom? So
and I do apologize, Dom. I didn't mean to forget you. I mean, you did do the initial work, right? So what is our anticipated timeline? Because let me tell you, the fact that Brian was happy to put stuff into our repositories excited me largely for the sense of progress that it created, that we were actually moving towards a solution or an implementation of some kind. Because Tazama Release 4 has been out now for almost a month. We are not necessarily any closer to Helm charts than we were when we started talking about Helm charts in May. Right? So what do we need to do to be able to make a decision, and how do we move forward? Let me put that out to you guys. So like I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety on my part. People are definitely asking for Helm charts. We get polled about the status of the Helm charts maybe once, twice a week from the community. So I'm getting a little bit anxious about, how long it's going to be before we get some Helm charts out there. The approach that we have here already is like, now it's just a question of agreeing on the shape of the cookie cutter and then cutting all of the cookies across all of the other repositories. If we are now saying, well, actually what we want to do is we want to put all of these things into one central Helm chart, then we basically have to do the same work, but we don't do them in those repositories where we can test that they are working individually. We have to test them in the central repository and then make sure that they work for all of the others, which to me sounds like a slightly more complex process, and also very difficult to share the work, because now we are all working on the same Helm chart. Not everybody has a repository where their job is now to just align that repository with the template, which to me seemed like a very efficient way of getting this started and rolled out. Please help me. How do we see this going, and how do we sort of like move this towards a imminent conclusion? What do you guys recommend?
well, I think people need to decide if in principle they want to give an opinion and or if they want to review the two sets of Helm charts that's available. I've had quite a big look at the Helm charts that Dom had already made. We also know some people from the community has tried it and has commented on it. So I think we've got an example of the full Helm chart, and then we've also got an example of the suggestion of an umbrella Helm chart. After the discussion today, we have a clearer view of the pros and cons. So I would almost say we're in the position to vote and just make a decision and bed it down. But since it's a working group and this is the contributor to state his case of why did he even think to split the Helm charts out, is not here to explain it to us, because maybe we're missing something and there's a reason why he has the need for distributed Helm charts. But to me, I've never deployed something with a distributed Helm chart. I've always just had a Helm chart that deploys everything it needs. And that's sort of my expectation from a Helm chart. So not, I don't see the need for distributed Helm charts.
You know the PR for DOM stuff? Or the original? Because I want to look through that as well.
I shared the link in chat. It's also on the discussion. So the last one, I shared both links.
Maybe just a question for Dom. Dom, have you actually done any work on that since the last time we looked at that?
No, my other work brought me to some other places. So yeah, I'm keeping keeping my toes dipped in the water, so to speak. But yeah, some things have changed on my end, so I may the coming weeks I may have a good chance to revisit both my work as well as Brian's work. Okay, look a bit
Okay,
deeper.
great, but thank you. Do you have any strong opinions one way or the other? Since you did propose sort of what I would expect then is the standard expectation anyway, single central consolidated Helm charts.
I tend to think about it from the point of view of a DevOps team. So not so much from the maintainer side, but more from what would a DevOps team want to do. So
right.
Yeah, so I mean to me the starting point really is having the infrastructure, and then deploy the core components and then the rules, right? So yeah, having it from a single reference. So my take on it is I would probably, if I'm a DevOps team, I'd probably tailor the Helm charts more along the lines of the core components and then the rules. Deciding how many of each I would need. So yeah, I don't know if that brings you closer to the answer, but to me it's trying to take a look at it from the point of view of the people doing the deployment.
And that's a fair observation as well. So if those are the people who will be using it, so the users of the specific solution is also, it's worth considering. And I think maybe, what do you guys think about Sam's suggestion? So if we are creating these Helm charts as a first pass, consolidating them after the fact should be a reasonably trivial refactor.
Well, I think what Sam was trying to infer is if a lot of work has been done on distributed Helm charts, it will be very straightforward to move those from the distributed Helm charts into the central repo, is how I interpreted his comment.
Yes.
So it won't be double work if someone had spent a bunch of time working on separate things.
For maintenance, yes.
Yeah.
But as a development activity, sure, it makes the unit testing and the isolation of the functionality and the sharing of the work maybe a little bit easier to start with. And then that leaves the decision open because, as I understand it, the work needs to happen anyway. Doesn't matter where you put it. The Helm charts still need to be developed.
Yep, agreed. But then to get the individual Helm charts done, we go back to the question, what do we want in the Helm chart in the repository? Should it spin up all its dependencies? And I think the answer should be yes. And then that means when you want to consolidate it, you have to make sure all the values.yamls variables for saying what is my Valkey URL, what is my Valkey password, what is my NAT URL, all of those should have the same name so that when you consolidate it, there's not much work for you to do. So there's a whole bunch of additional stuff you have to ensure when you merge them, because you don't want to specify 10 different Valkey names because the values.yaml had it differently named, right?
Yeah. But I'm assuming that's what the general section is also for. So you'll consolidate the general sections into a single one, I guess.
We can do anything we want, but I'd leave it open to the one that's probably going to support the Helm charts the most, which is probably Kyle. I'd ask Kyle what does he think would he be able to support the easiest, and
Well, here's the
give a
thing,
big weight
right?
I still
to what
vote
he
for
says.
Central, but it's also the
Yeah.
community. Let's say I'm
Yes.
dead one day or something. Someone
Well,
else
heaven
is still
forbid,
going to
right?
have to. Yeah, exactly. But someone's still going to have to manage it at some point.
But
So,
it's more than likely that Tazama will not have that internal capacity forever, right?
yeah,
So
exactly.
what do we think will be the easiest for people to maintain, right? I like the modularity of the distributed. I do appreciate that you are now also maintaining two things in two different places, which is double work. Every decision we make here is a trade-off at the expense of something else. I'm not particularly married to either approach. I'm just looking at this from a perspective of the bird in the hand. I already have a PR in the TMS service, right? Who's going to put that PR in the Tazama Helm for us?
Me, I'll do that tonight. I'll read through everyone's suggestions and I'll check to see maybe what I could do is try combine all of them together. I'm still trying to think of a way that, because we already, obviously, we don't want to have, well, we've still got Jenkins with those deployment YAMLs and service YAMLs and stuff, right? But if I can try and
Sure, but
maybe do it in a
ignore Jenkins for
way,
now.
no,
Ignore
but
Jenkins for now.
if I can think in a way that I can use those YAMLs in each repos without changing them in one centralized Helm install, that we can import those deployments into a Helm install, that you'll have all the services based on that one command. And if you need to change anything, you can change it like what Foley was discussing earlier on. So let me try to figure out something tonight and then I'll push something through for everyone also. But it's, like I said, it's a group discussion.
We
Mine's
can
still
also
going for
ask
the central.
we can also ask Dom if he's willing to make a PR to the Tazama Helm repo. Because currently the Helm that you've got is on your GitHub, Dom.
Yeah, I don't have access to that.
Oh, yeah, it's actually public. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Sorry, I don't know. I'd prefer somebody else made a PR.
I get
If
a
you click that
full
link,
page
Dom,
not found.
Sorry.
Can maybe also just as an aside, Ryan? Dom, to what extent, how complete is your Helm charts at the moment? Would you recommend that as a starting point, or is it worth maybe taking the TMS one and transposing it into the central Helm chart? How do we tell? I mean, I think maybe the first thing to do would be maybe to get Carl to take a look, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's better. I mean, in my case, my need was pretty simple, and
Yeah.
truth be told, I really just started from. It was like a transposition from the Docker version to a Helm version that will work on our Kubernetes setup, and which it did. Okay, which it did. So yeah. And that one made some assumptions with regards to the infrastructure components. But it also deployed the core, and then the rules. I think for the rules, I really just deployed the two basic ones. But the code, you could specify the other different rules that you wanted to fire up. So it works in a way that is very very similar to the Docker version. That's what I got.
that sounds
Okay.
cool. Yeah, maybe see if you can share that with me, please. I did post in our working group there that I don't have access to it for some reason. It is public, which is odd.
Yeah.
And then I could just take a look.
Yeah, hold on, eh? Let me post it here again. Actually, I did post it in it's also posted in the chat group. Sorry, not the chat group, but the particular notes that we had here. Helm-based. One. You see it? I posted the link there.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. I can see that one.
Yeah, and then this one as well. Yeah. So those are my.
Are you logged in? Sorry to interrupt you. I'm just want to know if Carl is logged in, because maybe you have to be logged into GitHub in order to see those private replays.
Those other ones I couldn't, but these ones I can now.
Yeah, but these have always been okay. These are public. Yeah, the second step contains my notes. For doing some testing as well as for running some configurations. Forgotten some parts of it. Sorry, I'm getting old. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Tom.
Okay.
Okay, so where does this leave us now? I feel like I need to document some actions here.
Well, put an action item that I'll look through DOM stuff tonight, and I will post something tomorrow. And if anyone else has some suggestions on things, then they can pop it. But I'll also maybe create the PR. But I'm going to more focus on a centralized thing, similar to like what Dom's done, yeah.
I'm sorry. Was that there? I didn't hear that quite well.
No. I was just mentioning you, not a question.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Just something else that maybe is worth thinking about is in the past the documentation-driven development was suggested, which basically just says we need to ensure we have readmes for the Helm charts we work on, so that people can use that. And that stems from Dom. I think it was someone in your team that had some trouble with the Helm charts, and they didn't really understand how to do something. So then we just mentioned that we need to ensure we have a README. So anyone that works on Helm charts, just jot some thoughts down in the README while you're busy with it, so that you have a base.
Okay.
Cool. Anything else for today?
Nothing for me. Well, that's good. I'll pop something. I'll work on something tonight. And then if I have any questions or any suggestions that you guys have, just pop them in there as well, and I can take a look at them.
Sweet. Thank you very much. I'm going to add this here.
Don't forget to add me as a attendee there, please.
I need to add you here. Who are you again?
Oh,
there we go. No, not that one. Is this one?
Yeah, that one.
Okay, cool. Alrighty. If there is nothing else, I will recommend this opportunity to go outside and touch some grass.
Suggestion. Makes justice. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
I'll throw some spanners in the work. I've also got a Helm repo I've worked on before we had all these examples. So I'll also can open a PR for a Helm chart, and then you've got 3 Helm charts to compare. Good luck, Carl.
Please, yeah, more the merrier.
I'm going to minute that so that, you know, that actually now becomes an action.
Okay, I need to head out. I'm going for boxing. But I shall chat to you a bit later. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Enjoy your day and your evening. See you all later.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.